Welcome back again, everyone. I've been away for a little while doing responsible adult stuff. For those of you that don't know it, it was tax week this year in the US and I had to get my papers in order and send a big fat check off to the man. Well, now that's all behind me, so it's time to resume work here on the ATVW. Despite being busy, I still found myself doing little bits of work here and there on things around the yard, but nothing that would make a fully qualified YouTube video. So let's just put it all together right here. People really want to see the ATVW running, and as do I, so I attack the stuck engine problem first. This engine used to belong in Gregory the Bus, and despite the stigma of the remark, "ran when parked," this engine actually did. But some 20 years ago. It was driven off to its position where it sat in the woods. The rear hatch in time rotted off, and there was a hole cut in the rear deck with no air cleaner on it before I even got to him. The engine did turn over freely at that time, however, but after me having taken it home and moved the engine around the yard, it got stuck. Or dry stuck. I don't suppose there's any amount of water got into it, but I'm not really sure. It's probably just humidity. But moisture doesn't work too well with cast iron cylinders. But upon checking the oil, it was full to the low mark, and it appears that it's all oil. So that's good. But if there's any water in the case, it would be sitting on the bottom anywhere where the dipstick wouldn't reach. But a proper dump and a screen cleaning is going to be in order before attempting to run this engine at all. So first I cleaned the area around the spark plugs. There was lots of dirt and sticks in there. The tins are going to have to come off later, probably because there's some kind of rodent nest in there. But for now, we just don't need that junk getting down in the spark plug holes. Then I got to removing the spark plugs. The first plug was sooty but dry, but no evidence of any rust on the plugs, which is a very good sign. All the following plugs came out looking the same. More good news. But plug number 1 had a helicoil on it, which came out with the plug. Now that's a problem, so I'm going to have to fix that. I used some P-Blaster to fill the cylinders. I like this stuff because it foams up a lot and does a really good job of reaching even the tops of the cylinders. You just have to spray a ton of it in there. Each cylinder got its share until it foamed out the spark plug holes, and then I took a break and let it soak. So I left this thing to sit overnight and played with the ducks in the meanwhile. Boomer is always ready to attack, and Crash really wants no part of this. She's a completely different personality, and wow has she gotten big. So I chilled with them for a couple and came back out the next day after having polished off a nice whiskey and cola. I got a 30mm socket and ratchet and was ready to go with an appropriate sized cheater bar. I expect this to require some force to get it moving. The rear breastplate is in the way here, and I can't get a socket on the pulley nut. But it's just a rusted mess and isn't a required piece of tin for an open engine setup on the ATVW, so I'm probably just going to cut it off anyway. So for now, I just bent it out of the way. So here we go. Cross your fingers for me. Let's see if I can get this engine to budge.
I don't believe it. Here it goes. It's a little sticky. There's a sticky spot. Oh, I passed it. Yeah. All right. Not seized, just a little sticky. If the rings loosen up and it gets compression, this engine might run.
Well, ha! I cranked it over by hand sometimes to ensure it freed up nicely. There was a stiff spot that went away after just a few revolutions. If this engine gets proper compression, it may run just fine, but of course, we're going to need to make sure that it gets a spark, and I'll probably remove this progressive carburetor. I'm just not a fan of these things. Some people like them, but I'm just not one of these people. I returned the spark plugs back to their original locations. I did the best that I could to get number 1 just barely started to cover the hole to prevent debris from getting back in there. I have some time certs around here somewhere. Hopefully that will fix the problem. Otherwise, I'm going to have to find myself replacing that head. But I do have some spares around here, so, well, that shouldn't be a problem. Well, so far, that's a success. Later, I'll dump the oil out of there and clean up the points. I will need to get a long positive wire for the battery, which has now been mounted up front. And I need that before I would expect to turn it over by the starter. But that's easy enough. I might even have one around here somewhere if I look around. Probably that I've taken off something else. Now, I've also been criticized for installing the heater boxes on this engine. Well, I'm really not that dumb to need them. I mean, you know, come on guys, really, I know the difference. Obviously, I don't need them, that's just the way the engine came. It's just, I'm not going to get into swapping out parts until I know what's going on with the engine. But as I said to B some weeks ago, I have a proper Baja exhaust that will be used here from my junk pile.
Yeah, it literally sticks up like that.
And I think this will look really nice on here. And I think that's it for the engine for now, so we're going to jump over to something else. A lot of other suggestions come in, and people have told me to spend glorious amounts of money on all sorts of things, not understanding, once again, that this is a junk build. Costs are going to be kept down, and that is part of the challenge that I made for myself. I received a lot of requests for building a minimalist Beetle body to go over this thing, but once again, I was missing critical and expensive components to do so. In order to keep the cheap junk status, I told people that if they wanted to see these things, they'd have to send them to me. Well, when it comes to put out or shut up, most of these folks chose the quiet path. Except for one guy, Josh. What a dude. He got me a front clip for a Beetle, which would be the beginnings of a body to build off of. I put it on the ATVW for a first look. And oh my god, it's just way too big and sits way too high. Yes, this is the factory position for the front clip in relation to the chassis. I even aligned it with the front axle beams, and, well, you can see it right there. But, rather than just cop out, I grabbed some flared fiberglass fenders that I had in storage to see what these things would look like if it had fenders on it. I mean, I just don't know. But once I put it together, I don't think I'm too keen on it. I think one of the reasons that my project has so much charm is that it's small. And even smaller than a shortened Beetle to the same wheel dimensions. This thing just looks like a radically modified ATV, and very little like the Beetle that it was actually built from. The other reason this thing looks so small is that the wheels are only 13-inch rims with low-profile tires, far smaller than the 15-inch wheels that they replaced. But, just for grins, I grabbed an empty fiberglass hood from storage. This is the same vintage body kit that these flared fenders came from. Yes, I actually have a complete body kit of these. So just to see how it would look, I stuck it on. You'll have to use your imagination here, as it needs lots of cuts to make it fit right. I also have Eleanor's original hood, and it's in very bad shape, but a perfect candidate for cutting up. It's funny how the Volkswagen Jungle Green is actually a pretty close match to the Honda Foreman Green. Well, at this point, the front and rear fenders are kind of close together, and that makes it really difficult for me to step through without banging up future paint or bodywork that this thing will end up with. Sure, I could square them off and make more space, but I think that would just be really ugly. I really don't think this look is for me. I think it's just too big and, well, it reminds me of Benny the Cab from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I suppose I could build some modifications to the front clip and get it to drop down about 6 inches or so, but it's still just so incredibly wide and bulky. I'm just not trying to build another Beetle here. It's really not the goal of this project. But some folks suggested to use the Honda Foreman bodywork in combination with some of the VW parts, but again, let's have a look here and use your imagination just a little bit. I suppose maybe I can cut the hood short and fill that gap, but I don't know yet. These are things I have to think about, but only after we get it running and riding. Cosmetics are not a priority here. I only demonstrated this for fan service. You guys asked, so I provided. And now for a little bonus content. While I was hunting for junk around the yard for the ATVW some time ago, I dug up all kinds of things. So I started to build a second junk project out of what else I found. I always wanted a go-kart, so why not build one? I used an MTD riding mower as the platform. It's been sitting in a yard for about 7 years or so and was given to me by David, also known as Ranchero302Me here on YouTube. You guys should check out his YouTube channel and subscribe to him. He's just a really, really nice guy. And I see he and his family about once a week or so for some type of cookout. He's one of the nicest people I know, never butt heads with the guy, and, well, just one of the best friends that I have, and I have to say thank you to him for giving me this project. Well, unfortunately the engine was full of water, so it went bye-bye. I plan to put an engine on the rear instead, unsure if another mower engine or if something else. but I found that the front axle beam unbolted and flipped over and turned around backwards, thus lowering the front end about 6 inches. This was awesome. I just swapped the parts around and it worked. But then I had to make some steering for it. It's pretty clever what I set up here, but it's way overkill for a go-kart. But it's based mostly from the original MTD parts, but modified. A few bearings, a universal joint for a VW-based SAM rail, and a steering stub also for a Volkswagen. I bent the tubing myself to make something that's nice to look at, and, well, I went to make the stuff fit. I was surprised to find the steering shaft on the MTD was also 16mm with 36-tooth splined ends, just like a Volkswagen. So this stuff just bolted together like it was meant to be. That makes my head spin that that was even possible. The steering shaft was lumpy though, and it didn't fit well into the bearings, so it needed to be turned on the lathe. I was surprised to find the shaft had some hard lumps on it that didn't cut well, and soft parts that cut just fine. I'm not sure how they made this shaft, but it was for a lawnmower, so you don't need anything fancy, and it was never meant to be cut. So I guess that's just what I get. But I built the steering apparatus complicated on purpose, as the front axle beam actually has a rocking suspension on it. I wanted to retain this, so I fed the steering shaft through the beam. That way when the suspension sways, it shouldn't affect the steering geometry quite so much when it articulates. It does need some proper lube so it moves better, but when I get it apart again, I will get to it. Retaining the front suspension seemed like a good idea to me because I'm going to try and maintain the MTD rear differential too, as it has a reverse gear built into it, so no solid axle for me. But with an open differential, it's in your best interest to keep all 4 wheels on the ground, unlike a solid axle kart where you want to lift the rear wheel in order to corner without major understeer problems. This swaying front suspension will probably help to keep it level as per the original design of the MTD mower. I've even considered having the suspension sway when turning the steering wheel, so that way it forces the kart to lean into turns. How about that, guys? I bet you haven't seen that before on a go-kart. Well, I guess we'll see what I come up with and how well that works. The front tires on here look like they should be okay, but they don't seal well on the rusted rims. So I'm going to have to take that apart, clean them out, and fix them up. I think it'll probably work out after that. The rear tires, however, are shot. I hit them with the weed whacker by accident, and the weed whacker has a metal blade on it, so it literally puts slices into the tires. So they're going to need to be replaced. The good news is I have a set of like new ones that are over here that have been sitting around for a while. It should work out just fine. No dry rot on them. They should be good to go. I will also probably use some old VW seat tracks removed from some old floor pans to make the seats nicely and neatly adjustable. And as a perk, it's easily removable for full service. And here's the junk I removed from this mower. What a pile of shit. Oh my god. Well, if you want to see more of the Mow-Kart and more of the ATVW, just say so. Maybe I'll make a whole nother video series just for the Mow-Kart itself. So that's all for this week, you guys. So thanks so much for watching. Licky, likey, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to pluck that dingle belly. That way you get updates every time I upload a video. And don't forget to check out duckshit.net for all of my different social media links. You'll also find bee stuff up there. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.